What is the gospel? The word gospel means good news. And that is the message that Jesus came for us, died for our sins, and therefore he is having paid that penalty. He has caused us to be able to be saved. That's the gospel. Now, it's a little complex the way I say it, and it's even more complex if you Google it. You'll get a dozen different answers for what the gospel is. What is the good news? Some people say it is the entire Bible. Some say it's John 3:16. Whosoever believes in him, shall not perish. That's kind of vague. It doesn't tell you a whole lot of anything. What people in church are taught, especially when they're children, but even as adults, is even more misleading. They say that you have to accept Jesus into your heart and you will be saved. What does that mean? I mean, accept Jesus into your heart, that doesn't say anything, and I'm afraid that a whole lot of people, Christians, when they're asked, did you accept Jesus into your heart? They say, yes, I did on July 4th, 2001. You accepted Jesus into your heart, really? What did you do? The way I was saved now was due to a different verse, Romans 10:9. I looked it up. It was 2003. I wanted to know how to be saved. I was scared that I was going to go to hell. I wanted to go to heaven. I was such an anti-Christian and so vocal about it that I was embarrassed to ask anybody. My wife was a Christian, but nonetheless, I was afraid. I looked it up. I found Romans 10:9. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Now, that's very clear. I mean, I can confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord all day long. Turns out that what that means is that you accept Jesus as Lord. You let him take over your life. Follow him. Again, that's very easy. Believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. It's a little more difficult. You ever seen anybody who was dead come back to life? I mean, someone who was at a funeral, dead, walking again in a few days. I've never seen that. And when I was saved, when I was having trouble 20 years ago, I asked God to help me to believe that somebody who was dead came back to life. And instantly I thought about the disciples, about how they were fishermen, basically country boys, rednecks. I'm from Arkansas. I know a lot of rednecks. If they say that they saw somebody die, then come back to life, if they're making that up, if you threaten them with a whip or with death, they're going to recant. They're going to say, okay, I made that up. But if you threaten them with a whip or with death, and they say, I saw it. I saw it. If a redneck says that when threatened with death, that means he saw it. Those rednecks back then, they saw it. They were threatened with death, and they still said they saw it. I realized right then that they must have seen him back. He must have seen him back alive. And I believed. And suddenly, right then, I was different. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was a different man. I felt bad for my sin. I changed. And over 20 years, as I've studied and experienced and learned, even though the Bible is very confusing, it's very confusing in some places. And what you see Christians doing is very confusing. And a lot of it doesn't seem to make sense. I myself was saved. I am different than I was before, and I've been different for 20 years. How do I explain what's going on in the Bible? Well, how do I explain? What I can tell you is that since I was saved, my goal is to spread the gospel. That's what we are told to do by the Bible, by Jesus. And I am determined to do that. I do spread the gospel. I'm spreading it right now. And I will fight against anything that gets in the way of that, gets in the way of the gospel being spread. I find that people who are not Christians are not Christians. You can't expect them to spread the gospel. You can't expect them to act like Christians. It's not their fault, okay? They're not Christians for reasons, and it's not their fault. They're not to be blamed. People who generally get in the way of the gospel being spread are Christians. as a result, I am pretty hard on Christians. I am a Christian, therefore I'm qualified to be pretty hard on them. And I am pretty hard on them. When I see things that Christians are doing that is getting in the way of the gospel, I will tell them. When I see things that Christians are doing that is getting in the way of the gospel that they are intentionally doing, there's no accident, they mean to do that, I come down hard. And that's what you'll see in my videos and on my channel. And that, I hope, explains why I'm qualified to speak, and why I'm so hard on the Christians. It's all about the gospel. It's all about Jesus.